The public discourse is fixated on kinetic hardware. Multi-billion-dollar procurements of Rafale fighter jets dominate defense headlines presented as the definitive metric of state power. This is a deliberate misdirection. The strategic liability of these platforms is their cost. Their political utility is nullified when a rival can impose disproportionate economic and systemic damage for a fraction of the investment. The real vector is not a missile, it is silence. While you watch the skies, the systemic attack is already underway. According to Cloud SEK, state-backed actors like the Muddy Water APT are not deploying explosives. They are deploying rust-based implants into the critical infrastructure of their adversaries. This is not sabotage. It is a pre-positioned kill switch for the entire economic nervous system, a weapon designed to trigger a national solvency crisis on command. The ultimate expression of this doctrine is not a server breach, but a physical severance. The true targets are the two pillars of global data flow, the consortium-owned undersea fiber optic cables and the constellation of satellites that function as the eyes and ears of the Western military apparatus. Cutting these vectors achieves what no air force can: instantaneous systemic paralysis. This protocol manufactures the blind Leviathan, a state possessing trillions in kinetic assets but suddenly without sight, without communication, without actionable intelligence. A carrier strike group becomes a floating liability. A squadron of fifth-generation fighters becomes a collection of isolated, deaf pilots. The Leviathan is not defeated. It is caged and sensor-deprived. This state of engineered frustration is the final prerequisite. It is the political accelerant that funnels decision-making away from conventional responses and directly toward a discussion of vertical escalation, the very protocol that connects a silent cyber implant to the strategic necessity of a tactical nuclear strike. The core motive is not ideology, it is solvency. A state actor, when its domestic liabilities exceed its kinetic assets, enters a solvency crisis. As analysis from institutions like CCS on Russia's campaign demonstrates, a prolonged and unpopular war becomes a catastrophic liability on the national balance sheet. Political capital evaporates. Economic reserves are depleted. The state can no longer afford the symmetric cost of conflict. This is the mathematical inflection point. Confronted with an adversary who can approve a substantial number of advanced aircraft like the Rafale fighter jet, the weaker power cannot compete symmetrically. Each Rafale represents a capital expenditure it cannot match. To continue on this vector is to guarantee bankruptcy and collapse. The state is therefore forced to pivot. It is not a choice. It is a protocol dictated by economic reality. Weakness forces a pivot to asymmetry. The objective is to exit the unaffordable kinetic arena and impose unacceptable costs on the stronger power in a different domain. The state shifts its strategy from asset-on-asset attrition to a vector of systemic disruption. The math is simple. Find a method where the cost to inflict damage ratio is inverted. The output of this solvency protocol is documented. Cloud SEK reports confirm that state-backed actors like Muddy Water APT are not building aircraft carriers. They are using rust implants in spearfishing campaigns. Their targets are not army bases. They are Middle East critical infrastructure. For the cost of a few programmers, they generate a strategic liability for their adversary worth billions, neutralizing conventional superiority without firing a single shot. This is not chaos. It is calculated economic warfare. The math does not lie. The Royal United Services Institute, or RUSI, has quantified the new economics of lethality. A $5 million main battle tank can be neutralized by a $500 FPV drone. This is not a balanced exchange. It is a systemic solvency crisis for legacy military doctrine. This economic inversion is the central gear in the mechanism. While nations like India move toward procuring fleets of advanced Rafale fighters, platforms representing a multi-billion-dollar investment in conventional air superiority, The entire model is being short-circuited by a new cost curve. This is the democratization of violence. Technology has collapsed the cost of projecting force. What once required an air force is now achievable with a laptop. Cloud SEK reports confirm that APTs like Muddy Water can deploy low-cost cyber implants to hold critical infrastructure at risk. The kinetic cost to the attacker is zero. The strategic leverage is near infinite. The result is the political paralysis of expensive, exquisite platforms. They become multi-trillion-dollar liabilities, too valuable to risk against disposable threats, yet unable to deliver a decisive outcome. This economic reality is the accelerant, manufacturing the strategic justification to bypass the conventional battlefield entirely and escalate to a domain where the cost-benefit analysis is reset with absolute authority. The state-level travel warnings for nations like South Africa or Canada are not the crisis. They are diagnostic indicators. They signal the activation of a proxy laboratory, a gray zone where the protocols of the next war are being tested and staged. This is not random instability. It is the deliberate selection of a theater of operations. This is a systemic blueprint. A state lacking symmetric kinetic options uses these politically fractured or economically stressed regions to stage low-cost, high-impact cyber sorties with plausible deniability. The objective is not to conquer the gray zone, but to use its infrastructure and instability as a launchpad. This is asymmetric leverage, quantified. Intelligence from Cloud SEK confirms this protocol is active. Iranian-linked advanced persistent threats like Muddy Water are not just theoretical. They are currently deploying Rust-based implants in spear-phishing attacks targeting critical infrastructure in the Middle East. The gray zone is where these vectors originate. The industrial core of a rival power is where they land. This staging strategy manufactures a solvency crisis for conventional military doctrine. The announced procurement of a substantial number of advanced Rafale fighters is a case study in this new liability. Each jet represents a massive capital expenditure, yet it is politically and functionally useless against a cyber implant launched from a proxy territory. This isn't a failure of technology, it is a mathematical invalidation of a multi-trillion-dollar defense posture. The doctrine is known as launch on warning. It is a Cold War protocol designed to solve a simple problem. If your early warning systems detect an incoming nuclear barrage, you launch your own assets before they are liquidated in their silos. This ensures retaliatory capability. The entire protocol, however, is built on one fragile assumption, that you can trust your data, that the signal from your radar is irrefutable. This assumption is now a systemic liability. Analysts at Cloud SEK have confirmed that state-backed actors, like the Muddy Water APT, are deploying sophisticated Rust-based implants against critical infrastructure in the Middle East, source number 1. The objective is not kinetic destruction, it is data integrity failure. This creates what strategists at CSIS refer to as the fog of digital war. An implant does not need to destroy a radar dish. It only needs to blind it, or worse, make it lie. Inside this digital fog, a commander is strategically funneled into a binary, zero-sum choice. The main screens go black. Is it a system glitch, or is it a targeted cyber attack acting as the prelude to a decapitation strike that is currently inbound? If you wait for confirmation, you risk total kinetic insolvency, the inability to launch a counterstrike. The use it or lose it protocol activates. The fear of being disarmed forces the commander to launch based on a ghost in the machine. This is the ultimate asymmetric vector. A low-cost cyber weapon creates a high-probability scenario where the stronger power is algorithmically forced to consider initiating its own launch. With reports already suggesting the US and Israel are assessing localized nuclear options against Iran, source number 3, the cyber attack manufactures the perfect trigger condition. It weaponizes the opponent's own doctrine against them, creating a predictable path from a single line of code to a previously unthinkable kinetic outcome. The protocol is already in motion. Cloud SEK intelligence confirms the Muddy Water APT group is actively deploying advanced Rust-based implants into Middle East critical infrastructure. This is not random vandalism. It is the deployment of a strategic, low-cost asset designed to hold multi-trillion-dollar economies at risk. The next phase is not a declaration of war. It is a calibration shot. An attack designed to be sterile, effective, and politically deniable, testing the solvency of Western response protocols. Its primary function is to gather data on forensic attribution speed and political thresholds for escalation. Within the next 12 months, anticipate a systemic logistics failure at a major non-U.S. commercial port facility, a key node in the global supply chain. The event will not be an explosion. It will be a data blackout, a targeted shutdown of the container management and crane operation systems, timed for peak throughput. The attack's attribution will be impossible by design. The economic cost will run into the billions, making a mockery of conventional deterrence like the Rafale fighters India is procuring. As analysts at CSIS have warned, this calculated frustration is the accelerant. It forces the dominant power toward the one domain where its superiority is absolute, creating the political justification for a localized kinetic strike. The event will be officially categorized as a catastrophic and unprecedented system malfunction.